Hey everybody, Steve Bourie here from the Jackpot Gents. Thanks for joining us today. I am one of the hosts of the Jackpot Gents along with my son, Matt Bourie.
How's it going, everybody? And today we have our live stream commentator or moderator and all-around slot machine expert, Josh O'Connell. How are you doing today, Josh?
I'm doing well. Great to be back with you both today.
Always a pleasure. And today we are going to be busting some slot machine myths. And I think we're going to split this up into two parts. Part one is going on this channel, the Jackpot Gents. Part two is going to be going on our new channel. We've started a new channel that's going to be focused much more towards educational videos, and that is youtube.com/@American Casino Guide book. So if you want to see part two, make sure you go to that channel. This is going to be the first new video on that channel. We have some old videos there as placeholders. And this is the first new video. So we're going to start part one here and end part two on that channel. So make sure you go subscribe to that channel for good videos and to watch part two. So let's just hop right into this, Josh. Let's tackle some slot machine myths here.
Actually, before we do, let me just put a bit of a prelude on this. Those who follow my site or have seen me do other videos elsewhere know that I love to bust slot myths. And the biggest reason for this is that I think that having a healthy relationship with casino visits, with gaming and so forth is really important. And when people get sucked into these myths, many times they're trying to find like a blame for something that happened, but I think that that's an unhealthy thing to do sometimes, because it's basically trying to pass the blame of a bad casino trip or something onto something else. And so it's healthy to know what's really happening there. Like, and I think a lot of these myths will underscore that as we talk through them. But, ultimately, there's a lot of stuff that people think casinos are doing, and they're simply not. It's just the way that games work. And so we'll go through a lot of that today, and as well as in the second part. And there's also plenty more beyond what we're going to talk about today. I'm sure we'll hit others over time, but this is a good starting point, I think. And the first one is pretty much one I see the most, which is casinos change slot machine paybacks based on the time of day or the day of the week. Or actually, there was a comment on our last video, do they change it at the end of the month or the beginning of the month to try to hit quota, or they have to pay out a certain number of jackpots or whatever the case may be? So answer all of that is no, none of that is going on. In fact, nowadays, casinos are most likely to set a machine and not touch it until they either need to move it to a different part of the casino or they're going to replace the game. Most casinos have an idea of what they want to make off of slots, and the easiest way to do that is to have them all set around the same number, so that way it works out. Setting some higher, some lower takes the risk that, well, what if they only play the higher paying games? What if people somehow figure out that that's the bank, right? That's the magical bank that's going to pay them all of their big wins. So they have to kind of do something. And the other cold reality is more and more casinos are owned by bigger and bigger corporations: MGM, Caesars, Bally, Hard Rock, and they tend to have a corporate policy that goes through all of their casinos. And so increasingly, it's pretty much set it and forget it. You're not going to see casinos constantly tinkering with payouts, because the amount they'll gain for such tinkering is probably nominal at best, and a lot of work to do so.
Yeah, and what a lot of people don't realize is it's actually a lot of work to go in and change the payback of a machine, as long as it's not server-based gaming. And server-based gaming was this like whole boogeyman, like was 10 15 years ago, I forget, whenever it first came out, that they were saying, oh, all these casinos are going to be able to run all their slot machines off a central server and change paybacks on the fly. But all the information I've seen on that is a very, very small fraction of casinos in the entire country have actually gone to server-based gaming, because it was very extensive. Like, they pretty much had to rewire the entire casino floor to be able to do that.
And let's take that example a step further. So imagine you're in a server-based gaming casino, and so people believe that this is the thing, right? So like this is sort of an extension of that myth. But like in Nevada, for instance, machines have to have no credits in them. They have to sit idle for a few minutes. Then they have to reboot the machine with the new payback, right? Because changing the payback requires this machine to cycle and go through its sort of validation process. And then it still has to sit idle a few more minutes. Imagine you're in a casino, even at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you see 150 slot machines all around you suddenly reboot, right? I would guarantee you there would be a TikTok video or a YouTube video. Someone would get a picture of this. Like, this is not the kind of thing that's going to happen and no one's going to notice. And the fact that you don't ever see that is just further proof, right? Like, yes, I know casinos don't want you taking pictures, but people surreptitiously take pictures all the time in a casino. So the reality is like you would see these things happening. And the fact that you don't ever see these things happening. You've never witnessed it. You've never heard of anybody witness it. Just underscores how much of a myth this is. But I know where you were going. Most casinos don't have that. And so they have to open the machine. They have to have multiple people there. They have to do paperwork. They have to document. They might need a different chip. They might have to have the gaming commission in some markets there to see you pull the tape off to open the cabinet and make that change. There is so much. This is where the regulations really, people don't understand the regulations, so they don't understand how protected they are, right? It's really all of that additional steps that just keep casinos from making arbitrary, well, we'll change it on Friday and change it back on Sunday. The amount of effort, they would never even get through the casino floor the first time, let alone the second time to change it just for weekends. And then having to do that every weekend, I don't think there'd be a slot tech out there that would be even willing to do that. It's just not realistic.
The thing, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, sometimes we're in the casino and you will see slot techs there and they have paperwork on each machine. And Matt and I have seen it. Well, it was on a video poker machine. We were sitting there and they're calling off numbers to each other after these were new machines that were put in. So they have to verify that they're set up properly.
Yeah, but the other thing is verifying the payback. They were going through on each individual. It's one of those ones that's got like 100 games. You've probably seen us played at the Hard Rock with the Powerhouse Poker, and it's got Dream Card and all that. And they were going individually through each game, reading the type of game, jacks are better, the payback percentage, and they went individually through every single game.
Denomination might differ.
For hours. Yeah.
Right. So it has to be done on each machine individually, but there are some instances where we're talking about server-based gaming, and the most likely place you're going to find it is when casinos are operated in conjunction with a state lottery. Now, there's a few states where they do that, and the machines go in partnership. The casino acts in partnership with the lottery, and the lottery is in charge of those machines. So in that instance, it all goes through a server base, and that's the most likely scenario where you're going to find server-based gaming. But yeah, to go back what you said. In probably 95% of the instances, it's each individual machine. If you want to change the payback, you got to go into the machine and do it individually.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the lottery stuff too, though, is many times they're not actually slots at all. Like if you're in New York, they're more like, they act more like pull tabs or scratchers, where there's sort of a set number of tickets and a set number of outcomes, and so you're not actually, it's not like an RNG going in the machine at that point. But then the flip side to that, sometimes the payouts are better. New York has a floor of 90% even on penny slots, which or penny machines rather, which you can't get in Atlantic City and you can't get in Connecticut and like markets surrounding it. So you technically have a better gamble there.
The one thing that I think that started this all is the rumors are, which I think I could be wrong, but my interpretation is people always say, oh, they raised the payoffs on the weekends because on the weekend, there's more people in the casino. So of course you're going to see more people hitting jackpots. If there's 1,000 people in the casino, you're going to see a lot more jackpots hit than if there's 100 people in the casino. So I think that's where it all sort of stems from.
Well, Matt, you're a genius because that's actually our second myth. But it's a good transition. So do you have a better chance of winning because there are more people in the casino? Right? It sounds logical, right? There's more people there, but it's a numeric thing, right? So like the example I give is, let's say there's 100 people in the casino and there's 40 winners, right? If that number increases to 500, 5x, the 40 would also increase to 5x, so it'd be 200. So the ratio is still the same. So your individual chances of winning haven't changed, but you're going to see more winners for exactly what you described, Matt, which is simply put, there are more people in the casino, there are more wagers being placed. So realistically, there will be more hand pays. I was at a casino about a week and a half ago, and I was sort of starting to count the number of hand pays that I saw because it was unusually high. Like I normally don't see that many people with hand pays on a single night, but it was a very busy night. There was a lot of people playing. They were betting big in many cases that I noticed. And so realistically, you're going to have that happen more often in those scenarios simply because there are more people betting at that time. That doesn't change your chances of winning. The odds are still the same, but you do have the ability, like with more people in the room, that you're going to see more of everything. You'll see more losers too, frankly.
There's one casino near us that has a weird feature that I don't think I've seen anywhere else. It's a Calder, Dad, that they have the little Players Club screen at the bottom where anytime anyone in the casino hits a hand pay, it like makes a little noise and then it pops up on the Players Club screen and announces to the entire casino. Every single machine in the casino does it. It says, oh, it's another hand pay or another jackpot or something like that. And if you're there on a Friday or Saturday night, it's almost annoying how often it happens. But you go on a Tuesday afternoon, it doesn't happen nearly as much.
Certainly be annoying if you're not the one getting the hand pay. That's for sure.
Yes, very annoying. And it like does like a little music too, and like the music overrides the music on the slot machine. It's bizarre. I've never seen it anywhere else, but it's an interesting feature. I don't know if it's a good one or not.
Yeah, it's like saying, hey, look how good everyone else is doing.
In my home casino, they do it with audio, so they have an announcement that goes off when someone gets a hand pay, and a little and a set of. Fortunately, they don't use the same song every time, so it does have a little bit of diversity to it. But you'll hear it a lot on the weekends for sure.
All right, well, that makes sense.
So let's go to one of our favorites as a group. Using a player's card reduces your overall payback, or variations of it. I get more jackpots if I play without my player's card, or I pull my card. And I start to win more and all that kind of stuff. And just to sort of reiterate things we've said on previous videos together, players' cards have nothing to do with the payback of the machine. The machine's payback is set on the machine itself. The players' card system is a separate system that is used to track your play so the casinos can understand what type of player you are. The closest thing that players' card will do to interacting with the machine will be loading your free play onto the machine so it can do that kind of a transaction. But that's about it. Everything else is more of kind of a read-only type of thing, like how much you're betting, how many spins you're doing, how long you've been on the machine, which are all important for that marketing calculation of what your offers will be. So players card systems will not take away from your machine's payback. What they do is, as I mentioned with the offers, they give you the ability to get offers. So playing without your card technically means you're giving up part of the overall payback you should expect from a casino, because I personally believe the earned comps, the marketing offers, are a part of what you get paid for your casino trips. If you walk into a casino and get free play, that's still something you're getting that you would not get if you didn't have your card.
Yeah, that's true, especially because we play a lot of video poker. But when you factor in, if you find a machine, well, in Florida, you're really not going to find, say, a 9-5 jacks, 9-6 jacks or better game returns 99.54%. Well, if you found the Players Club that gave you 1/2 of 1%, what you do, if you want to calculate the payback on that machine, you have to add back in the 1/2 of 1%. So your 99.54 becomes 100.04. So you're actually making, but you can make money on that machine. You have to put it back into the overall payback percentage. So yes, that's very important to put that free play you're going to earn back into the equation.
And another thing.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that a lot of people use the Players Club, the fact that you put your card in and the Players Club machine knows what your points are and all that. They use that as the argument that everything is server-based gaming. They're like, well, how can it not be server-based if I stick my Players Club card in and it knows exactly what I have? What a lot of people don't realize is there's two separate computers in the slot machine. One handles the slot payback, and the slot payback. Sorry, I guess one handles the payback and how the slot machine works, and the other one handles the Players Club. And they don't really. The only way they talk to each other is just for loading in the free play or counting the amount of coin in. That's all they do. They're completely separate, so they have no interaction with that one computer can't change the payback of the other one, and vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, the computer nerd in me would point out that just because a system is networked doesn't mean that network has control over everything, right? So
exactly,
people think that just because something is theoretically possible, it must be possible. And it's usually much simpler. People create much more complex scenarios in their mind than the reality of things because logically it could happen, right? Like, a slot machine could be configured remotely, right? But they just simply, in most cases, aren't. Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things that people kind of struggle with. But Steve, I was going to mention my home casino. We have 9-6 jacks or better at certain denominations, but they do not let you accrue comp dollars. They only let you accrue the tier credits. So that's how they avoid those issues. They'll do like triple point days and stuff like that. And when that's happening, could push it into the realm of possibly a plus EV scenario. So they don't allow it, unfortunately, on those games.
One last thing I want to mention here before we move on is that we always say that you should use your Players Club card whenever you're sitting down to play, because you're going to be able to accrue these benefits. But I think we all agree on this. There are certain times when you should not use your card. And Matt, did you want to get into that?
Yeah. If you're ever going for a short visit, you don't want to use your Players Club card. So there is sort of an asterisk on this one. So we could just want to say, if you're just popping in and out, real quick, don't use your Players Club card if you're just going to pick something up or just hopping in for dinner and you're not going to play as long as you normally should. That's the only time you would not benefit from using your Players Club card.
Mhm.
Yeah, if your budget's way off from your standard on a low side, right? If it's on the high side, who cares? Get the extra points. But if it's on the low side, like if you're a $200 casino player, but you're going to go with $40, you might want to think about that because that could water down your average at the casino as well. So, budget sometimes can factor into that for sure.
Mhm. Now, this next myth that you're going to talk about, I don't think I've actually heard this one that much. One's kind of new to me, but I guess it kind of makes sense. I could understand why people think it.
Yeah, so I see actually a lot on the slot forums in particular because they'll see a new game in there. And again, the observation is it seems like people keep winning. It's hard to get on the machines. They're fighting for them. And so is it that new slot machines have a honeymoon period to get players hooked on the game? And so the answer is no. So if we go back to our first myth about changing things, casinos set up the machine and they just kind of leave it alone. New slots tend to get more attention. People are interested in them. They're going to want to play them. And then whether they endure or not, just simply whether people like the game or not. So, generally speaking, casinos don't need to set the paybacks higher to get people interested because a new slot will inevitably get interest. What does happen though, and I think we've mentioned this on a previous video, and if not, this is a good thing to talk about, is many slot machines now have progressives. Progressives take time to build up. The payback of a slot includes built up progressives in its expectation of how much it's going to pay back. So if a brand new game with a $10,000 starting grand has a jackpot hit on day one, you're only going to get paid what, 10,003, 10,020, like something very small off the mark, versus the 13 or 15 or whatever $1,000 that jackpot will pay after a normal time of building up has occurred. So what I've actually seen looking at paybacks of new casinos that have just opened up is that you actually see the payback start off a little bit lower than the average, and then they slowly build up by about a half to a full percentage, sometimes a little bit more, to where they will pay out ultimately, because that's the difference between a blank progressive that's barely built up and one that's fully fleshed out. So it's actually the opposite if it's a progressive machine. Like anything else, it's usually recommended that you play a game with better progressives over ones with worse progressives, because if you do hit them, you'll have a chance at getting a better payout. And so when they're all just starting out, you're playing a game where you're basically playing for the interest of it and giving the house a little bit more because those progressives just aren't built up yet.
Now, I have two more slants on this I wanted to mention. One, besides new slot machines have a honeymoon period, I have also heard that when a new casino opens, they put the paybacks much higher to have people come in and win more money and win more often, so they'll be all excited and happy and come back and continue to play at that casino. And have you heard that one, Josh?
Well, so that goes back to what I just mentioned. The data shows that they actually start off a little lower because of those progressives need time to build up. I've never seen a situation looking at the publicly reported payback data where it starts out higher and then leaps lower after like 3, 6, 12 months. It tends to start a little lower, ramp up to where it's going to land, and then kind of stays there. So here's some examples if people want to look for themselves, because I think it's always healthy to not just take my word for it. Go take a look at Massachusetts. So Massachusetts has 3 casinos that have opened up over the past decade or so. All of their payback data going back to the very beginning is all publicly available. So you can take a look at it month by month and you can see how it progresses.
Now, the other scenario I wanted to mention, that when I was writing the American Casino Guidebook, I'd written it for 28 years. And through the years, and I forget what the time period was, but there was a time period in Las Vegas when a new casino would open on the Las Vegas Strip. And there were like 3 instances, I think. And people were hitting megabucks in the new casino. I'm sure if you go back and you Google it, there's a history of these articles there or posts, because people were thinking that, similar to setting the machines paybacks higher to entice people to play there, that they were allowing these megabucks jackpots to be hit. But it was weird. There were like 3, maybe like 3 in a row, 3 new casinos opened, and each time they opened, someone won 1 megabuck. Now, have you heard that one at all, Josh?
I haven't heard that one, but I think that falls into kind of a combination of the first and the second, and that's the shiny new object gets the attention, right? So there's going to be more players in the casino. That's going to increase the probability of it happening there, simply because there's more people checking it out at a given time.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
you know, I think the shiny new casino, especially in a place like Las Vegas, where you just have such volume of traffic, you know, people are just going to be curious. Like, you know, I've been playing at Luxor for 15 years. Let's go down the street and check out this new casino I've never been in before, right? And I think there's probably a lot of that in play when it comes to that. Now, Megabucks is so hard to hit that might not fully explain it, but I think that certainly has a lot to do with it.
Well, and probably back then, it was probably late 90s, early 2000s, I guess. But, you know, I think the Megabucks jackpot was probably easier to hit back then because it started at a lower point. I think it began at like 3 million or something. And it's higher now.
Just like Powerball and Mega Millions, where it used to be lower jackpots, but you could actually eventually win it every once in a while.
Yeah. All right, but that was interesting because it was a rumor after a while that, oh, a new casino's opening, go in there and play Megabucks because it's going to hit. But, you know, eventually it stopped, but that was the big rumor for a while.
And the next myth that we're going to talk about is actually sort of bleeds into our play in the casino when we do our live play videos. And this is when people are always telling us to do backup spins, you know, after we have been doing well, which is never leave a hot machine, or if a machine's cold, leave immediately. What do you have to say about this?
Well, if we think back to some of our previous conversations, and we did the whole video on the random number generator, which explains how a machine works, we know that each outcome is random within a set of possibilities. A concept of a hot or a cold machine is a backward facing analysis. You're looking at what's happened with the hopes of predicting what will happen. But the problem is, regardless of what's happened, any particular outcome in that range is possible in the next spin. So a hot machine staying hot just means, you know, it happened to choose one of those outcomes that was good from the choices it had, you know, and a cold machine, the opposite. But it can't predict what's going to happen in the future, right? So slots aren't adjusting what they're going to offer based on whether the machine had been hot or was cold. Like some people say, oh, you got to get off of a machine when it's paid you out so much because it's going to take it all back. It's going to go cold on you. Or versus some that say you got to stay on a hot machine because it's going to stay hot, right? And that's the whole point. People are just sort of putting their own sort of spin on things based on what they can understand by looking at it. But the reality is, it's same range, same set of options. If someone hit the top jackpot, theoretically the same odds of hitting the top jackpot on the very next spin. So leaving a hot machine or a cold machine or whatever is really it's a neutral thing. You're not going to know if you made a good choice or a bad choice because what's happened has nothing to do with what will happen.
Yeah, and I remember there were old myths about this where people are saying you could actually touch the machine itself and it was cold to the touch. That meant it was going to be cold on the paybacks. And if it was warm to the touch, that meant it was going to be hot and go on a hot streak, which I think that one's even crazier.
Well, here's a crazier one for it. They used to be when they paid out in coins, the theory used to be if the coins were hot, that meant that it was going to be a hot machine. Somehow, if the coins were hot to the touch.
I think that was a bit before my time.
Yeah, that was because when I started, they used to pay out in coins. You used to have to carry these big buckets around, and it was the worst if you were playing nickels because you'd have all and your hands would get all. It was good. And they had the handy wipes at every because you had to go there and they had to pour the coins in and count it out. So it was really a pain back then. But that was the theory back then. If the coins were hot, the machine was hot and you should play it. But one other thing I wanted to mention here, this is similar to if you invest at all in the stock market and you look at prospectus or warnings about mutual funds, they always say every single one says past performance is not necessarily an indicator of future performance. So you should keep that in mind whenever you go into a casino and you're deciding what machine to play.
All right, so that does it for part one on busting the slot machine myths. If you want to see part two, make sure you go subscribe to our other channel, youtube.com/@American Casino Guide book. And part two will be out there. Josh O'Connell from knowyourslots.com. Thank you very much for joining us. If anybody wants more information about you, where can they find that?
So my website is knowyourslots.com, where new content is posted every single day. I'm also on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at knowyourslots, and sort of a parked YouTube channel at knowyourslots as well for the time being.
All right. Thank you very much. And keep an eye out for part two, everybody.